You're tuning in to Storytelling, Story Listening, an experimental project to look at decolonizing research through podcast as storytelling. This is a short introduction to the podcast series. I'm Jessica Hum, and I am practicing story listening. I was born in Toronto to parents who were descendants of immigrants. My mother's parents and my father's father were first-generation Chinese immigrants. My father's mother, however, Alice Cozier, was Indigenous Canadian, and she later gave up her son for adoption into a Chinese family. Even though I do not know the full extent of my relations, I still identify with this mixed ancestry. I've lived in different communities in Canada, after Toronto in Vancouver, and then Betcheko in the Northwest Territories, and now I'm living in Halifax, Nova Scotia. I'm a student of the Masters of Resource and Environmental Management in the School for Resource and Environmental Studies at Dalhousie University. This podcast is an academic project. It began as an idea first discussed with my academic advisor, Dr. Karen Baisley, who suggested that I explore new media as a potential outcome of research. So this podcast seeks to answer, how can we develop a practice of sharing oral stories and teachings as ways to prepare for climate change? Can we really bring decolonizing methodologies into academic research? For guidance, I reached out to two teachers. I was a student in Dr. Melanie Zerba's fantastic course, Indigenous Perspectives, when Dr. Sherry Pictou was a guest speaker last year, sharing her experiences with Indigenous feminism and decolonizing decolonization. Both of these teachers, Melanie Zerba and Sherry Pictou, have a depth of experience working with and for Indigenous communities and also many other colonized groups, working with participatory research, creating boundary objects, and employing creative media into their research as reciprocal exchange. So together we set out to create 4 podcasts in 4 months. And in this series, you'll hear my conversations with several influential people and teachers in my life. They include Dr. John Bizot, a well-respected Clicho advisor who practices decolonizing every day, and he inspires young people in his communities to do the same. Janet Rabiska is a Clicho woman who is walking her own educational journey in southern Canada, where she also strives to be strong like 2 people. And Dr. Albert Marshall is a Mi'kmaq elder from Unama'ki or Eskasoni in Cape Breton, Nova Scotia. And then in our 4th podcast, I sit down to discuss reflections on this process and the outcomes so far with Drs. Melanie Zerba and Sherry Pictou. All these interviews, they took place remotely through the phone or through internet communication during our escalating COVID isolation. This was in the midst of times of social and physical distancing, and yet we were able to exchange stories, and I was able to continue my practice of story listening. So now I invite you to sit down with a cup of tea, make yourself comfortable, and have a listen to these wonderful stories with me. Masicho, Wilalin, Namaste.